Hello, everyone. My name is Franca, and I am on the EVV CON team. Today, I have with me Jenny Liu, who is one of our speakers, who is going to be one of our speakers on the 23rd of April. And I'm here to get to know her a bit better and about her topic for EVV CON. But before I start the interview, I want you all to know a little bit about Jenny based off on what I know. And I know that she's a management consultant. She advises executives of large companies to digitally transform their businesses and also mentor and coach nonprofit organizations. She is currently studying to become a registered parliamentarian, which would be linked to our topic later, so stay tuned. But aside all the seriousness, aside wanting to save the world, she also has a fun side to her. And we were just talking about her passion for dragon boat racing. And if you haven't heard about it, just like I didn't a few minutes ago, I would advise that you strongly go and Google it and learn more about all the skills and the history behind it. So thank you so much, Jenny Liu, for being our guest today and also being our speaker for EVV CON. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much for that amazing introduction. You just saved me my job for doing an introduction about myself. Thanks for having me.
It's a delight to have you. But even though I've introduced you, that is just my perspective of you. I'm sure the rest of us will still want to know more about who is really Jenny Liu. So you could tell us about yourself and your story.
As you said, I am a management consultant, and part of which that's basically solving problems for companies. And how I do that is usually in three ways. I create compelling customer experiences, given my background as a product manager, and then I help them reinvent new business models in a digital era. And as a result of that, we have to optimize their operations. But none of this was possible until I figured out how to find my voice and develop skills in leadership and teamwork, which are essential for working with teams or projects or any client. And that was interesting in part because when I was a child, I experienced a trauma where I lost my voice. And it took me years before I could learn not just how to find it and say words, but to really truly express my feelings, what I wanted to express to the world, what I really wanted to say. Because sometimes you can't say that in the workplace and you can't say it with your friends or family. So where do you say it? And that's why it's so important for me to find organizations or help foster ways where we can speak safely. Because when you can speak safely, we can all learn from each other and be able to benefit from everyone's different ideas, diverse perspectives, and also their different ways of doing things. And that's the true spirit of, I think, Silicon Valley, why there's so much emphasis on diversity and inclusion in entrepreneurial teams. And also, I hope to bring that back to New York, where I was born and raised, so that there are also more entrepreneurial, innovative companies and projects and people working in Silicon Valley.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Jenny Liu. I love that you mentioned wanting to create safe spaces in the workplace, and everything said is so valid. And with you mentioning losing your voice in a world like we live in now, where we're exposed to so much information, sometimes it's difficult to know which is your actual voice, because you get to hear everyone speaking at the same time and you don't get to think so much. So now I'm curious, how was it possible to find your voice? What steps or what techniques or what community helped you to find your voice? Or what did you do particularly?
I think I was blessed with opportunities of mentors who then encouraged me, different organizations where they created safe environments for me to practice speaking up. And so that ranged anywhere from a nonprofit organization for fostering Chinese American biopharmaceutical development to a organization that's a 501c nonprofit for leadership. And in both those cases, they made it a priority to ensure it's a safe, positive cultural experience for you to be able to learn and develop your leadership and communication skills. And so in those two organizations, those are what helped me over the years overcome my fear of public speaking, where my voice used to crack when I was in front of crowds. And now with practice, I can at least speak in front of a crowd, and also hopefully online in this digital world to more different types of audiences too.
You speak about, in terms of your career, you speak about helping businesses digitally transform. And I don't know if you could shed more light on that. What do you mean by digitally transform businesses, particularly in the healthcare industry?
In healthcare, a lot of things are still very archaic or paper-based using fax machines, in part because there's a lot of regulations and it takes time to change the organizations and adopt new standards, new ways of doing things. So the first thing usually is how can we get them to map their journey, the customer journey or the user journey, so that we can see where are opportunities to transform it from a paper-based method or a manual-based to something that's more automated using the digital tools that are available, whether it's using, for example, software where it can, instead of having a person manually look at the words and type it, like data entry, you can have optical recognition software, or for example, using natural language processing, where you can now, instead of having a person transcribe everything and say everything, you can actually have software basically automatically transcribe in real time what is said and save extra time and energy so that those roles can be used elsewhere to supervise or to perform other important tasks for the organizations. So those are ways to optimize the efficiency of the organization. But sometimes it's also a dramatic change where it's just completely revamping what they're doing in the past and replacing it with robots or machines and software. So those are opportunities where you can now replace not just people. We're not trying to get them out of the people business, but we're trying to create new opportunities where people can leverage their talents with relationships, with the leadership skills, public speaking and management of using these technology and tools. And so it's creating more jobs for them in a different way, but also creating new opportunities for the organization to serve its customers and also meet the needs of its employees and other stakeholders. So when you think about it for digital transformation, it boils down to like three things for me, at least, because it can mean so many things to other people. One is compelling customer experiences where it's digital or digitized. And then second, it usually changes the business model where you're no longer making money from a brick and mortar or visiting a store. So you're now finding a way to make e-commerce transactions or getting subscription pricing. And then as a result of that, there's going to be inefficiencies or changes in the operations where you have to train people, you have to reallocate the resources and find ways where you can align all of these resources to produce the results more efficiently. And so all of that is part of the digital transformation process that I was trained at. So this is what I end up doing for most of my clients and also the organizations I work with.
Oh, that sounds quite interesting. And the key word I take from it is efficiency. So you go into a system and ask yourself the question, how can we be more efficient? How do we improve systems so that it benefits everyone and it also shortens time, allows people to maximize fully? If I'm correct, that's essentially what I gleaned from this, from what you said.
That's essentially it. There's a lot of people doing digital transformation. It's a buzzword used for the last few decades, but it means something different for each organization, each professional. But for me, based upon my experience as a product manager, and then also in business development and in operations, those are the three skill sets where it lends itself to helping businesses digitally transform themselves in this global economy, especially during the pandemic, where we're now forced to work remotely and engage online virtually.
I like that you were solving real world problems. You are getting down to the ground and getting your hands dirty, in quotes, to help large numbers of people around in your community, in your vicinity. It's truly inspirational, just to sprinkle that there. So let's pivot a bit to the reason for the interview, which is EVV CON. So could you tell us why you have humbly decided to be one of our speakers this year?
This year, I submitted my application to be a speaker for EVV CON, in part because I wanted to elevate the value of virtual in a different way. I know that it's been phenomenal at getting world-class speakers, ranging from experts to world champions of public speaking in the past. And there's plenty of other workshops on how to optimize your online presentations. But in this case, I wanted to focus on something which was to enhance the virtual experience, making it safe, making it more engaging, where more people can participate and feel free to share their ideas. And when you do that, I think people can extract more value and enjoy that experience to share it with others. So that'll hopefully help re-invite people back to EVVCon each year, but also instill best practices that they can take back to their organizations at work or their nonprofits or their other hobbies. And so those are some of the goals that I'm trying to, without revealing too much, share through the workshop, where we can empower a safe environment for people to share their ideas and speak up, so that eventually we can have more effective decisions, more effective meetings, and more inclusion too.
All right, thank you so much, Jenny Liu, for giving us insight into your session, a little bit into your session. And like I mentioned before we started the recording, if you go through the schedule for EVVCon 2022, you notice a lot of it focuses on communication. But when you come to Jenny Liu's topic, which is empower ethical choices, you'd see that it talks more about leadership, which is an important skill, an important concept in every space we find ourselves. So I was just wondering why you have chosen to focus more on leadership. Is it something personal for you or something observational for you? And why do you think the public needs to know more about ethical choices in the workspace? You don't have to tell us what to expect. You don't have to give us a download of your presentation, but you can give us a snippet. Thank you.
So when I got into public speaking, everybody started telling me that was America's #1 fear. But since 2014, can you guess what it is now? It's probably in the intro if you read it, and if not, it is corruption of government officials. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to raise the issue of ethical leadership, in part because it's something we need more of in society. And the thing is, everyone has a different definition of what ethical leadership means. You and I are leaders of what is right or wrong for us, because you and I grew up differently. We have different values, we have different religions, we have different ways of doing things. But when we all sign a membership agreement to belong to an organization, it's no longer just one person deciding what is right or wrong. It's a group of people in that organization who have decided, hey, these are the rules of ethical conduct. And so it's one of the insights that I've seen is that from Harvard Business Review or various studies, they've shown that without positive examples of leaders who can showcase ethics, that's partly why perhaps people who are normally good and who have every intention to do the right thing somehow make unethical choices or poor choices. And I think it's more important for us to raise, how can we set the stage for more people to make ethical choices together? And that's why in the workshop, I will be, without revealing too much, trying to find ways and exploring one in particular, how we all can benefit in our organizations, ranging from your homeowners association to your nonprofit or your board meetings, on how we can make it psychologically safe to speak up, so that we can then ensure the minority voice is heard, majority can rule, to make an inclusive decision that we all embrace and accept to support for long-term retention.
Thank you so much, Jenny. I'm looking forward to your session, honestly. And while you were speaking and while I read your description of your topic, I was reminded of a book I read. It's called Power of Moments, and it talks about ethics and how people who fail in organizations to meet up with the ethics of the organization do that repeatedly. And the author mentioned something about failing to practice ethics. Like, we read it on pieces of papers, what we should and shouldn't do, but we never are really presented with scenarios where we actually have to make decisions that are ethical. So I imagine, I'm not sure if that could be one of the tips for empowering ethical choices, like practicing scenarios where you actually have to make an ethical choice. So I'm just saying it there. That's my thoughts. But if you want to learn more about it, you have to sign up for EVV CON and be present at Jenny Liu's session. So now, Jenny, what do you hope to gain from EVV CON? I assume this is your first. Is this your first EVV CON?
This is my first EVV CON. I've seen the videos from last year, which were impressive, which is why I thought it was great there was an opportunity to present on a topic that means so much to me and hopefully can impact others in a beneficial way. And so what I hope to gain from EVV CON is an opportunity to help grow more leaders who can create a more ethical future for all of us. And that's in part by learning how they can have more effective and orderly business meetings, and how they can ensure it's psychologically safe for their members to speak up, and that everyone can benefit to make decisions that are more inclusive together so that they can support them and execute them for retention and say, hey, we were a part of this together. That is our voice being heard in this decision. So we're going to see it through the end. So often I hear, well, that group of leaders made the decision. It has nothing to impact me. Or I don't agree with that decision, but I can't do anything about it. And so that's why it's important where we learn how we can all, what are some tools available for us to help each other learn what are the ways we can empower ethical choices, how we can make it more engaging and fun. So when you mentioned something about having polls of ethical dilemmas, that is the third section of the workshop, where we will be polling the audience to see how do you react relative to others in the audience to ethical dilemmas, and feel free to share how you would defend your choice, because there's no right or wrong. It's a group that is deciding and evaluating together whether or not they perceive that as ethically aligned or ethically different. And also there's opportunities where, hey, if the rules change because the needs of society, the needs of the members change, and the views and their perceptions change, then that's an opportunity to amend those rules of ethical conduct to include those different perspectives. So I think that's the beauty of finding a way to have these conversations and broaden the virtual experience, where it's not just about making better online presentations, but also setting the infrastructure for how we can elevate the value of the virtual experience to be safer, more engaging, and also more inclusive.
Thank you, Jenny. And even though you mentioned that corrupt governance or corrupt government is number one problem in the United States, I see how universal your topic is, because I imagine that members or attendees from other parts of the world will be on the call, and I see how valuable talking about ethics and the choices we make is going to cut across all countries, all continents, all individuals. So thank you so much for presenting it. And again, I really am looking forward to it. Before we round off, I want to just touch on something you mentioned, which is fun. So we've heard the serious part of Jenny. And in the beginning, I mentioned the dragon boat racing, and we're talking about it a bit before we started the interview. And I would love Jenny to just tell us about her experience with dragon boat racing and why is one of her many hobbies.
It's one of my hobbies in part because I wanted to develop a voice and also learn how to work as a team off and on the water. Because growing up in New York, where it snows all the time, I didn't get out much. I didn't have many friends. There was only playing video games. But when I realized in the workplace, I needed both of those skill sets, dragon boating was perfect. So when I was working at Genentech, I got first introduced to that sport. where it came from China, where it fostered celebrations every 5th of May to commemorate a martyr who basically was trying to help his kingdom become more peaceful by allying with others. So the villagers every year would race out in these canoes with a dragon head and a tail, and also wrap sticky rice in bamboo leaves, and then throw that rice in the water so that they can eat the flesh of the rice and not eat the flesh of the martyr for the fish. But this became a world federated sport that is practiced around the world and by organizations ranging from cancer survivors to corporations and nonprofits, even high school kids and grandmasters who are in their 80 years old. So you too can be fit to paddle even in old age as a team. And what it does is it forces everyone, unlike any traditional sport like football or baseball or basketball, where you could have individual all-stars stand out. Literally, if anyone stands out on 10 rows with 2 paddlers, one on the left, one on the right, you will hear paddles clanging. That is why everyone has to work together by paddling in time. They have to have the same technique, and they have to work together to pull that boat that is 2,000 pounds forward together. Otherwise, you will feel how heavy and slow it is when you're not in sync. And that is a great feeling when you feel you're working together as a team to pull that boat forward, where you have people in the front, which is your steering section for the timing. And then you have people in the middle who are your engine rooms who are pushing the boat behind the timing box. And then the boosters in the back who are taking advantage of that crappy water that's going so fast at the back to still give it that boost. And that is a sport where it helps not only you work together as a team, but even for the blind, you can feel when you're paddling together. So there's so many utilities of how to work together off the water, on and off the water, for all sorts of types of people. And then, since I was also a drummer, which sits in front of the boat, you basically have to also watch the timing and also communicate and motivate your team by projecting your voice all the way to the end at the back with 10 rows of paddlers so that they can hear you. And so that encouraged me to practice how to share my voice with others and project it in a lower voice so that I don't lose my voice after every race. But also it is fun because not only am I drumming to scare off the evil spirits in this ceremonial festival, but it is growing my leadership skills on how to express myself and also how to motivate a team, whether I'm sitting on top of the boat or in the seats paddling with the teammates. So that's why I chose dragon boat racing, especially during the summers, because it's a great way to travel around the world to paddle in different boats, but also practice those skill sets and encourage others to do the same.
How long does it typically last, the racing? How long does it typically last?
Typically, a dragon boat race is 500 meters. And for the world champs, they're about 1 minute. For the competitive divisions, it could be about 2 minutes or so. But it can also range because it depends on the size of the boat. Sometimes you have boats with only 5 paddlers. The minimum is usually 20 paddlers. And sometimes you have snake boats, which have 80 paddlers or 60 paddlers, right? And so you'll have a ton of people on these really long boats that can just only go in one direction because it's too hard to try to turn it around. And in Canada, sometimes they even have a donut race. So just imagine NASCAR going in a circle, right? 2,000 meter race, guts and glory. So those are endurance where you're not only doing the 500 meters once, but you're doing it 4 times. So in a circle. So that's some of the races that I've seen around the world, showing how you can sprint and how you can have the stamina to endure.
I find that quite interesting. So for teams to win, for them to work cohesively, there has to be an established level of trust. Is that built during practice, or do family members just come together and decide to race in drag boat racing? Because I imagine trust takes a while to build, particularly in sports.
You're right. Nothing comes together with random people, even with your family or your friends, without working together with practice, right? And so you have to not only learn how to work together in terms of the feel of the boat, you can feel it's heavy, and then you can optimize your timing so that you're all planning your paddles in the same time and pulling the water together. Then you also have to make sure that you're all in the technique, because one person has a tight technique and the other person is flaring. You can see that they'll hit the water at different times and exit at different times. So that'll be out of sync and cause paddles to clang or other issues. And then the last is, how do you pull? If you pull too strong, pull too quick, pull too differently, and brute force it from other people, you might be fighting the rest of your teammates. And so that feel is where it just takes time, where it's sometimes some people call Zen paddling. Just close your eyes and just pull. Can you feel if everyone's pulling together or not? And you will feel the difference for a 2,000-pound boat when it's lifted and moving versus it's slowly dragging with a big flat tire at the back of it. And so it takes practice to get that vibe or to get that in sync. But that's the beauty of it when you go out on the water, rain or shine, and you develop friendships on and off the water, to trust each other that we're working for the same cause to cross that finish line as fast as we can, so that all that work together paid off.
Thank you so much, Jenny. I've thoroughly enjoyed having this chit chat with you. But before we leave, could you just tell the audience, people watching, where they can go to register for EVV CON? Because I'm sure you'd have sparked their interests with your topics, your talk on your hobby, and EVV CON in general, what you're going to be telling us. So can you tell them when it's going to happen and how they can be a part of it?
EVV CON is happening Saturday, April 23rd. I believe the first session starts at 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time. My session will be at 7 p.m. and feel free to sign up at evvcon.com, which is Elevate the Value of Virtual Con, short for conference, so that hopefully we see you there, rain or shine. It is online, you can't miss it, and there'll most likely be recordings, but because we're elevating the value of virtual, it's better to be there so you can participate and you can share those best practices back instead of having to watch it after the fact.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Jenny. Looking forward to seeing you on Saturday.